enjoy harming or hurting their neighbors? Anyone? Alhamdulillah. So nobody loves to harm their neighbors, right? But what happens then? I mean, what does it mean even if you harm your neighbor? What do you get out of it? And if you don't, what do you get out of it? So let's hear from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Hadith Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فلا يؤذي جاره. The Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم says, he who believes in Allah and the last day must not harm his neighbor. Look at the statement over here. من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر. If you truly believe in Allah and on Judgment Day, then don't harm your neighbor. See how significant this statement is, Jama'ah. I repeat that again. من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فلا يؤذي جاره. Whoever believes in Allah and the final day should never harm his neighbor. And then he continues sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. And if you truly believe in Allah and the final day, فَلْيُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ. Honor your guest. Honor your guest. وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. And whoever believes in Allah and the final day, فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَسْكُتْ. Let him speak good or remain silent. Whether you speak that which is good, or better be quiet. There's another narration in which the Prophet ﷺ, he said, مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيُحْسِنْ إِلَى جَارِهِ. Whoever believes in Allah and the final day should be kind, فَلْيُحْسِنْ, which means be generous, be kind to your neighbor. Opposite to the first narration. The narration the Prophet said, don't harm your neighbor. This one now is asking you to take the extra step. It's not just you don't harm your neighbor, instead you do what? You do good. Basically take it to the next level, inshaAllah ta'ala. وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Say the same thing about the guest, and also about speaking good or remain silent. So from this, what do we understand? Let's go back to these three things. First of all, he said, لَا يُؤْذِي جَارَهُ. You should not harm your neighbor. What kind of harm that could be inflicted upon your neighbors? Like what? What do you guys think? We spoke about this last night, but let's elaborate more a little bit. What kind of harm people might actually put on their neighbors? Parking the car in front of the driveway. Especially, mashallah, if you have a big family and you have 4 cars. One for you, one for your wife, one for your mother-in-law, one for your father-in-law, and one for your son, one for your daughter. Then you need to have the whole neighborhood, right? So in this case, what do? You make sure that you don't harm, your neighbors by parking their spots if, they need these spots. What else? How about noises? You have a party, mashallah, and you go past midnight and the party in the backyard is going, tabarakah, barely starting. Especially 4th of July is coming right now. So you bring your fireworks, start, blasting everything and so on. Is that considered harm? Ya Jama'ah, is that harm? Of course, obviously. Okay, what if people maybe don't necessarily do these things? What about being curious about your neighbors? Like what? Like every time your neighbor parks the car, if you have a balcony or a window, you go on the window to see, what he's bringing with him. And next time you see him in the masjid, you say, mashallah, I saw you bringing many bags today. What's going on? You guys having potluck dinner, probably? Having party or something like that? SubhanAllah, I mean, some people, they have these weird curiosity to the extent that they put even their door cameras, the opposite direction, to the extent that they need to see what do they do, SubhanAllah. Now this is weird. This is offensive, and it's absolutely not acceptable. When it comes to the neighborhood, one of the duties we have to observe is satr al-awrat, that you cover, the faults and the errors or even the awrat of your neighbors. What if their family comes in or out and this and that, and subhanAllah? You shouldn't be. What if people keep curiosity, also keep asking about their neighbors' affairs? Just every time they see them, hey, hi neighbor, how are you doing? I haven't seen for example, your kids around for so long. Asking for the well-being of the neighbors, it's okay. How are you doing? How's your family? This and that. But going beyond that to start investigating and, just want to know everything about their lives, that's none of your business. That's also harm. So as much as we can, stay away from harming your neighbors. The next step the Prophet ﷺ is asking now, doing good, which we talked about it the other day. Like being nice, share food with them, whatever that you can show them, inshallah, tabarakallah. The second thing the Prophet ﷺ mentioned here, فَلْيُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ, honor your guest. When we say honoring the guest, what does it mean exactly? That means the guest, the moment the guest comes in, of course, you need to have some sense of hospitality in there. Okay, so what does it mean to honor the guest? Is there a specific standard for honoring the guest? The answer is no. The standard of honoring the guest goes back to what? The culture. Whatever the culture of your time, the culture of your place, the culture of your neighborhood, whatever that you belong to, is considered hospitality, then you offer that hospitality. In some cultures, hospitality is just a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and khalas, that's what we can afford. In some other cultures, hospitality is mashallah. They slaughter an animal for you, and you bring it on the top of the rice, and you have to eat. If you don't eat, they're going to shoot you. Because they take it seriously when it comes to showing their generosity. You have to eat our food. So it depends, right? So what is the standard? The standard is whatever is considered culturally acceptable in that time and that community. This would be hospitality, of course, for your guests. Obviously, the Prophet ﷺ says, if a guest comes, you should give them their prize. And the prize, meaning the prize is basically the top of the hospitality. So if you offer your guest, don't offer them, from what you guys don't eat. Because alhamdulillah, we have guests, let's give them what they don't eat. That's not hospitality. Instead, you give them from the best, al-ja'iza, the best of what you have. Okay, what if the best of what we have is just leftovers? Is there anything wrong with that? Of course not. Absolutely. If this is what you have at home, alhamdulillah. In the Arabic language, we say, al-jud min al-mawjud. Al-jud min al-mawjud. Which means hospitality, generosity, is from what we have. Is this all what we have today? This is what you're going to get. We're not going to, maybe you can afford to do anything more than this, so alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Is it allowed for you to do excess and way beyond the norms of the culture? Obviously, yes. It is acceptable. Even the ayat in the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he invited three young men to come into his house, he didn't know they were angels, right? But when they came in, what did he offer them? Ijlin hanid, an entire cow. Can you imagine a cow for 3 people, for 4 people? So that's a lot, right? It's okay to go beyond if you want to, as a sense of hospitality, but obviously, of course, don't waste anything. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, فَلْيُكْرِمْ جَارَهُ. فَلْيُكْرِمْ ضَيْفَهُ. When the guest comes, you should honor your guest. The least is actually a cup of water. The least, it's a cup of water. I know some cultures, they ask the guests if they need anything, right? They say, do you want anything? Do you would like to drink something? And if the guest says, no, thank you, khalas, they don't bring anything. In the Muslim culture, generally speaking, that's not a sufficient answer, right? They're going to get you something whether you like it or not. You're going to have to drink it. You're going to have to eat it. Again, we go back to the norms, inshallah, of that culture. The last thing the Prophet ﷺ talked about here, قال وَمَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَسْكُتْ. Whoever believes in Allah and the final day, let this person say good or remain silent. And that in itself, of course, requires tons of hours just to explain the meaning of this. Obviously, saying that which is good is that which is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If what you're going to say is not pleasing to Allah azza wa jal, or at least it's not considered neutral, then just stay silent. If whatever you're going to say is going to hurt somebody, is going to backfire on you, then don't say it. Okay, so what about people, they say, alhamdulillah, Sheikh, I don't say anything bad. I only type it and text it to people, that's it. Texting, on social media or comments or all that stuff, is that also considered does it fall into this hadith? Obviously, of course. Don't tell me, no, I'm just texting it, so I don't say it really. It's the same thing. If you know that what you're typing, it is going to be also sound bad when it's pronounced, when it's spoken, then just don't type it. Don't text it. Don't say it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it's pleased with it, let it come out. If not, keep it for yourself. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who listen to the speech and follow the best of it. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Any questions, Jama'ah? MashaAllah, everyone wants to be silent, yani, alhamdulillah. Yes?
Yeah. The question of getting scared and shooting the guests if they don't need to be, it goes back to the Ibrahim al-Islam then, right?
Yeah, well, no, but this is not a right culture anyway. Yani. If your neighbors now it's not going to eat, you're going to shoot them basically, or your guest. Actually, it is very common and very serious in some Arab traditions, some Arab cultures, and I've seen it with my grandfather. He didn't shoot the guy, but he just almost hit him with something. Really, it's because eat, and the guy says, I don't want to eat. My grandfather almost threw him with whatever he had in front of him. Well, because you're in my house, you're going to eat, basically. That's how serious hospitality is for them. Obviously, it's not mandatory to do that. If you don't want to eat, if you're the guest, and you feel that you're not, let's say, you don't want to eat, at least please the host by approaching that food. Like, for example, grab a piece, for example, or just one or two morsels, and that's it. That's more than enough. Just to please your host. Wallahu a'lam. Yes. Mm-hmm. Nah. Mm. No, that's not neighborhood. When you drive, it's not neighborhood. The driver is next to you, it's a different story. That's haqqut tariq, the right of the road. But the neighbors who are the neighbors and so on, I want you to go back 3-4 ahadith, 3-4 videos, inshallah ta'ala back. You will find that definition of the neighbors there. Now. Uh-huh. Yeah. So in India now they're complaining about Fajr Adhan is too early, so they need to silence the Fajr Adhan. You think that's in India only? You have no idea, man. They have the problem in Kuwait. Nowadays in Saudi Arabia, some people are calling to shut the Fajr Adhan down, actually. In the core of the Muslim land, they're asking for this. It's not an Indian problem, man. Mm-hmm. Mm. So if let's say we're in the Muslim neighborhood and we have non-Muslim neighbors living around us, is it even permissible for us to use these loudspeakers for Adhan al-Fajr? Honestly, it's these ahkam, what the ulama they call them ahkam sultaniya. Ahkam sultaniya, which means rules of the sovereignty of the land. So they're not a fiqh issue in that sense, because the fiqh issue is to call the adhan. Whether you call the adhan human voice or loudspeakers, as long as you call the adhan, you're done. Do you have to use loudspeaker for it? Honestly, it goes back again to the regulations in the state and the city. If let's say in Muslim countries, there are tons of masajid all over. In almost every corner there is a masjid. So when these masajids are blasting the adhan together, especially let's say next to a hospital or something like that, it might be an issue. So if a Muslim state wants to regulate that and say that, you know what, fine. However, only the major masajid will call the adhan. Let's say you have, for example, 5 big, they call them al-masjid al-jami', like the big Jum'ah masjid, and the others are musallayat. Musallas don't call the adhan out loud. Let the out loud, adhan come out from the major masajid. That's fine, that's acceptable. Or they might actually decide on the volume. It says make the volume at the adhan to that, for example, that level. So it will be acceptable by all. If there is regulation to make it acceptable, that's fine. So as Muslims, I would believe we should really accommodate, but at the same time, we should exercise our right to call the adhan. Wallahu a'lam.
Not with adhan. Sometimes like you have neighbors, like the blasting of the music and everything, and then
Yeah.
you go and talk to them, and then they start.
True. I mean, when I lived in El Paso for some time, subhanAllah, I had a neighbor actually underneath. I was living in an apartment at the time. So the neighbor underneath, mashallah, I mean, he's unemployed, single dad, he has 2 kids, doing nothing really. And all night, this is when he starts his day, at night. He plays the music all night, almost, and had 3 kids. So every now and then we kind of so I talked to him a couple of times, said, sir, this and that, blah, blah. And the guy said, yeah, sure. But he never stopped. I then, talked to the apartment complex managers. They sent him, notices a few times that please, keep it down, blah, blah, blah. And even they came to him and talked to him because I called him at night, says, come guys and check for yourself so you could see it. So they realized, okay, that's true, it's too loud. But the guy, he'd never stopped. And at one moment, they asked me to call the police on him. So I said, fine, call the police. So you have the right to also to exercise your haqq and bring your haqq back to you, even if it was to inform authorities. Wallahu a'lam. Last
But
question, Shah.
If a non-Muslim lives next door to masjid and is bothered by the sound of the adhan, does that consider harming him?
No, I mean, it's not about being a Muslim, non-Muslim. Even Muslims these days, actually, they complain about the adhan. Now, I know it sounds bad when we say, we have to shut down the adhan and this and that and so on, but we have to be considerate as well. If we are really having an issue, if the adhan is extremely loud with these loudspeakers, then we should consider that. We should make it, let's say, at a certain volume. Again, distribute that into different masajid. Not every masajid should call the adhan. Specifically in some communities, when you have 1,000 masjid in the same neighborhood, subhanAllah, mashallah. And the sad part is that all these masajid call the adhan at different times. Not even at the same time. So by the time these masajid are done, the masjid down there start calling the adhan. And then by the time this one is done, the other one starts calling the adhan. Why? Because they seem that they cannot call the adhan together. So they wait for the adhan, the loud one to kind of finish, then they start calling the adhan. Now this is different, it's disorganized system. It has to be more organized. Some countries, they have what you call the universal adhan, like in Jordan, for example. They have a universal adhan in the capital, Amman, which means they have only one adhan for the entire city. The entire capital, Amman, you talk about thousands of masajid, and it's only one mu'adhin. Well, not single mu'adhin, but one adhan basically for the entire city. There's one central masjid in the capital, and all the other masajid in the country, or at least in the capital, connected to this masjid through the FM channel. 10 minutes before the adhan time, they turn on to that channel, and then when the mu'adhin calls in that central masjid, everybody basically broadcasts the exact same adhan. So they finish together. And if you listen to it, subhanAllah, it's even actually more beautiful because it echoes all over, and the same mu'adhin echoes all over, subhanAllah, in a nice, beautiful way. Wallahu a'lam. Jazakumullah khair. I said last one. Okay, go ahead.